Welcome to episode 3 of Pera's Playbook. Today we're joined by head coach of the Northern Michigan football team, Shane Richardson. Thanks for joining me, Coach. How you doing?
Good. Thanks, Alex, for having me. Going
Yeah,
going
of
well
course.
here.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm just gonna read off kind of like where you've been, a little bit of background for the listeners. You played linebacker at Northern. Then you coached a little bit with Iron Mountain High School. You were a linebackers coach at Northern and Jamestown. You were a defensive back coach at North Dakota State, a linebackers coach at UNC Pembroke, and then defensive coordinator and head coach also at UNC Pembroke. Now you're at NMU. So I figured maybe we could kind of start at the beginning of your coaching. But when you were playing at Northern, was coaching something that was on your mind, something you wanted to do to stick around the game?
Yeah, I think what it was, I had such a passion for the game of football. I knew that I wanted to stay involved with sports. I loved athletics, and I didn't know if I wanted to be a college coach per se. I think it took me a little bit of time to work through my college playing career and then having an opportunity afterwards to come back and be a grad assistant and just really get my feet wet with the college game. I thought, wow, this could be a really cool thing to be able to actually do the next best thing next to playing and coaching it. And, just I think as I kind of went through that first year coming back to Northern as a coach, it really started to stick and wanted to kind of take the ball and run with it a little bit. So it was good. I mean, it worked out and kind of chased it and, kind of full circle kind of led me back, 22 years later or whatever.
Yeah. So after you had been the grad assistant at Northern, how did you end up going out to Jamestown and then North Dakota State?
Yeah, so there was a coaching change here at Northern Michigan after that first fall that I had coached here, and I was finishing up coaching with Eric Holm, who was my head coach as I played, and he asked me to come back and help out on the staff to be a grad assistant. And there was a coaching change right after that fall. New coaches came in. Head coach Doug Sams was here, and the defensive coordinator that I had been with, he was not retained. He took a job out at Jamestown College in North Dakota. I was a little bit in limbo, not quite sure what I was going to do. And he offered a job to go out there with him. And I thought, it's an opportunity to just kind of start paving my way a little. I think by that time I had been in Marquette for 6 years. And, when you're kind of starting out in your career, trying to figure out what you want to do, it's not bad to change things up. And so, being footloose and fancy free, just went out and, experienced something new and went to small town, Jamestown, North Dakota. And, it was great. It made me appreciate things. It made me start to learn things from the ground up. And then I was able to meet Gus Bradley. In fact, he's currently in the NFL and has done a lot of great things. He was formerly the head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he had made a call, and they needed a graduate assistant over at North Dakota State, and so I was able to fortunate enough to be able to get that opportunity to go there, and met a lot of great guys there on the staff, and they were also going through a coaching change, and so I was able to kind of stay involved with the old coaches that were there when I first got there. And then a couple weeks later, a new coaching staff came in and was able to meet with them. And so made a lot of really good connections and saw what a really high level program was, how that was ran, and just kind of took off from there. And it was
Yeah,
good.
so I mean, that was their first D1 season too, right? 2004.
That's right. I was there right at the transition. Yeah. And the first fall
And
that I was there was the last year of Division II, and then they went to FCS after that.
okay, yeah. So you were in that transition period. I'm
Yep.
sure there have been some good learning experiences from being in a program that's transitioning.
Absolutely. It was, you know, obviously it takes a lot of resources, a lot of support. And I think the biggest thing I saw was that the support there was overwhelmingly adequate. And you have alumni and community and administration and everybody that really was on board for Bison football. And I think they were able to make that transition pretty good. The record and the
Yeah.
championships kind of speak for themselves here recently.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, it's hard to make that transition, but usually the teams that do have found success, you look at St. Thomas. I think they're a more recent example. Last season, they had a great year after making their transition. It takes a little bit of time sometimes, but
Yep.
um, seems to work out. So you've coached at different levels. Has there been any major difference you've noticed from maybe the preparation, the attitude, how serious they take it at different levels, or does it seem to be pretty consistent?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I do think that when you get to levels that have a little higher expectations, there's a little bit more money and investment involved. You can certainly feel that, and I think there is a little bit of a difference in that. Um, I think the biggest expectations that I've always felt were the ones that I felt like I put on myself. And I don't think those have ever changed, but I do think that you're able to feel just what the community, the university, the administration, what are their expectations? And I think you have to be very clear with those as to what those are to understand them as a coach. And once you do understand those, you kind of understand what the importance of the football team is to those places. And so I would say yes, I think there is some accuracy to that. I think, people that really want to make it a priority, they care about it. And there's an intensity and an urgency that goes along with that. And obviously people want to see results for sure.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's why you hire, the right people, the right staffs, bring in the right kids because you want those results. So you spent the most time in North Carolina at UNC Pembroke. You were, like I said, a linebackers coach and a defensive coordinator before being a head coach. Um, I guess maybe touch on, talk a little bit about like the transition from being an assistant coach into a head coach.
Yep. So when I went to UNC Pembroke, we were starting the program from scratch. They had a program back in the early 50s. They had discontinued it for 50 plus years, and then decided that they wanted to bring it back to the university and to the community. And so I was fortunate enough to be on the very first staff that kind of ushered UNC Pembroke into the new era. And so I went there as a linebacker coach. Think it was really kind of a feeling of, hey, I'm still a young coach here and still trying to just do things right and figure out my way a little bit. And I think as I grew, as I went along, someone told me, you're never really ready to make those transitions and those moves to be promoted and to get into some of those coordinator titles and roles or head coaches seats. And I think that's true and accurate. It's like you're never really ready, but you're just as ready as you can be, and you figure it out when you go through it, and you just got to learn quickly. And so, going from position coach to defensive coordinator to head coach all at the same school, there was a lot of value to that because I knew the university so well. I knew how the football program was kind of created and structured, and knew kind of how to maneuver that as we went along. And I thought it was a great experience for me, and I think it was so valuable to help me actually be set up for now the job at Northern Michigan. That a lot of things that I was able to learn by just going through the grind of coming up and trying to work my way up. Now I'm able to really apply in a way that I feel very comfortable, very confident, very familiar with a lot of situations that I'll be put in as a head coach. And so you just never a substitution for experience, right? So experience is definitely your best friend when you get into these roles. And I feel very comfortable and confident now that being back at NMU as the head coach.
I think I really like that piece of advice that you were given. I think that's a good thing to note for players and coaches. When you think you know everything, it's actually can be kind of dangerous and detrimental. Um, like you said, you're always learning, and experience is the key. Even guys, you see different coaches who have been in the business for 30, 40, 50 years, and they talk about how they're still learning, and they don't know everything. And
Mhm.
that's a great, kind of mindset to have.
Yeah. No, thank you. And I think it's the only way to do it. I mean, you have to remain humble in this profession and in this industry because things change so quickly, and there's a lot of things that you cannot control either.
Right,
So
exactly.
when your fate is up to 18 to 23-year-old young men, it's a dangerous thing.
Yeah. So your most successful season was in 2016. You guys had a loss in the second round of the NCAA tournament. So what do you think was different or special, I guess is a way to put it, about that team, opposed to some of the other teams you coached?
Yeah. A lot of guys have said, I like to talk to coaches that are successful and, hey, what was the key to you winning that championship? What was the key? How did you have such a great season? And often there's not just one thing that comes to mind. There's a few things, and they all kind of have to come together. And a lot of times you just don't really expect it. I think for the 16 season, we went into that year. It was it was the third year of me being a head coach there, and we were climbing, we were growing, we were building, and yet I don't know that any of us really expected it to be just a great year that we are going to make a playoff run and anything like that. So the thing that does stick out to me about that team is they were able to just keep seeing that all of our struggles and failures from previous years, they were going to add up to being successes. And they trusted it. They were persistent with it. They kept putting their right foot in front of their left. And hey, they just continued to kind of go along the path of competing and doing everything they could to buy into what we were doing so that we could eventually get the success and the results that we all wanted. The competitive spirit, I think, was something that stuck out on that team, along with what I'm talking about. But those guys, they wanted to compete, they wanted to win, they were not willing to take a backseat to anyone. By no means was it a perfect team. We still had things that were issues, and we didn't have all the answers. We didn't have just all the best personnel per se, but it was a team that wanted to compete, and they wanted to do everything they could to win games when we got to Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Um, what was it like, in the NCAA tournament at the Division II level? I mean, how much media coverage is there, the fans, and different things like that?
Mm-hmm. So when I was at UNC Pembroke, we actually made 3 playoff runs. We made a playoff run in 2009, which was our third season of play after we had started the program, which was unheard of, right? So that was pretty cool. We came back in 2013, made another playoff run. We were in the second round again. We actually had the first round bye at that point. And then in 2016, when I was the head coach, was able to win our first ever playoff game there and be able to, get into a second round game that we already talked about. So I think what happens is when you get late in the season and you're in the playoff mix in Division II, they take typically the top 10 and they put those into rankings for all of the super regions. And if you're in that top 10 category, you're seeing your name up on those super region rankings every week. And it's like, oh man, like it is exciting. There's a different buzz. It's a little bit surreal. I mean, it's a very neat thing because all the teams around the country are looking at that, right? I mean, they're
Yeah.
watching the teams that are in the playoffs and trying to be there at the end. And so I think it's really a feeling of wow, like is this really happening? And it just really kind of, there's a buzz in the air. It continues to help everybody be a little bit more focused. And it's just really thrilling. It's exciting because you pour so much hard work and time and dedication and effort and energy into what we do on a year-round basis. And to be able to have your team be in the mix and feel good about just the results and the season that you're having. It's what we're all striving for. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. It's really a cool feeling.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Maybe we could transition into Northern now. Talk
Yeah.
about kind of getting the head coaching job. You came in December 28th, so kind of a hectic time with recruiting coming up and being thrown in the mix and trying to maintain a class and prepare for the future.
Mhm.
But also spring coming up and spring football. So what was your kind of like what are your first duties? Did you focus more on recruiting or like getting a staff and the spring and how did you kind of balance that all?
Yeah, it's a great question. There were three things that we had on the list that we had to achieve right away. Um, and I don't know what the right order was. It's in, I'm probably not going to say them in order of necessarily importance of how I perceive them to be or how our staff approach those. But we had to recruit. You just mentioned it. We had to make sure that there was a signing class that was going to be intact for the first week of February on signing day. We had to get a staff together, right? I mean, that was really difficult too because in recruiting in January, in that first part, you are so intense with making sure you're nonstop reaching out to guys, you're organizing, you're planning visits, all that stuff, and so it was really difficult to be able to put one over the other. But indeed, we actually did focus on recruiting for that initial time period because we needed to make sure that we didn't miss that February deadline to sign some guys. And then the third thing was we needed to connect with our team and we needed to establish a level of expectations and a level of trust that we could move forward with in the future. And that wasn't easy either. So, there were three things that we were trying to juggle and maneuver as a staff. And I would say that recruiting was kind of the priority just because of the timeline that we were under. And then you had the players in the current team that you really had to make sure that you were in tune with because every day we had workouts, every day we needed team meetings, we needed to establish the culture, we needed to make sure guys understood what the mentality was going to be. There was so much to be done with them. And so, but then, hey, we need helpers here, we need coaches here. So in that process, to vet coaches and to go through the interview process and to go through how human resources needs to check all the boxes, that's no easy task either. And so it really was all consuming. And it started to slow down a little bit once we got to kind of that spring break area and we knew we were coming back for spring ball. And you could kind of start to catch your breath a little bit, maybe just a little.
Yeah, it had to have been a pretty just hectic and crazy, month to a couple of weeks in that stretch from you showing up to Marquette to everything you just talked about, just all at once, just absolute, whirlwind.
Yep, for sure, for sure.
So, what would you say, brought you back to Marquette? I mean, is that something that you ever had thought about after you left? Like, boy, I'd like to go back and coach at my alma mater.
Well, I think I had thought about it. I didn't know how realistic it was. I didn't know, if that was really going to be like my best path, right? You get to be a head coach, and you kind of have some success and you have ups and downs or whatever. And, you just don't know where the road is going to take you, where the path is going to lead. And yeah, I think what happened was, obviously this was an opportunity that came open. And prior to me even really diving into it in terms of applying for the job and really going after it, I just was very cautious, I guess you could say, of making sure that Northern Michigan was going to be set up for success, and Northern Michigan football program was going to have the support, have the vision, have the energy behind it to be able to do something special and be able to catapult us to have success here. And so, I think that was my biggest research and trying to figure that out. Made some phone calls, was in touch with some people. Coach Rick Comley was instrumental in that. Obviously, our current athletic director right now, and being able to communicate with him and really see his vision and understand his energy and how he prioritizes NMU football here was a very helpful thing. And I think being able to have those conversations afterwards, kind of, just processing that for maybe a week. I'm not quite sure how long of time period it was, but I would say it was about 7 to 10 days. And then being able to really just be gung ho to say, you know what? Yeah, let's go for this. This can be a really, really good thing. And obviously with me being here before, there's a lot of familiarity, a lot of comfortability. Like there's a lot of really good things with the pride and the passion that I think I can bring to the program. And then also being able to couple that with my head coaching experience and being able to have, somebody that's capable of stepping in and being able to directly affect the change. And so I think with that combination, I was really excited to be able to do that. And, it's been a fantastic first 4 months or so, and looking forward to continue to keeping it going.
I just had a question pop into my head here. So you've been obviously a head coach now for, kind of the time when the transfer portal has become a bigger thing. And especially in D2, I know I look at like Davenport's roster last year. They had a lot of transfer portal additions from Division I schools and other things. So kind of looking at it from a coach's perspective, how has that changed over the years that you've been coaching?
Yeah, it's the transfer portal is really, it's a difficult topic, right? Because here's why. And I don't know, I'm maybe too authentic and too direct sometimes, and I don't know, but I think it's fair. I think here's what happens, right? The NCAA wants to give opportunities for student athletes, and they want to look at it from the situation that it's in the best interest of the student athletes. And I don't know that it's always going to benefit everybody else, right? And so once you come forward with an NCAA transfer portal concept, there's going to be something that is going to push back. That's not going to benefit everybody or everything that's involved, right? The intent is good, and yet it's really hard to build college football programs as a result. So the concept is this, okay? You're giving 18 to 23-year-old young men the decisions to say, if I experience some success, maybe I can experience more success at a different program, at a higher level program. If I don't experience success, maybe I need to just jump ship and go try to find a place where I can experience success, right? So you're giving them the choice now to make those decisions instead of really staying true to a commitment and staying at one school to try to fight through all of those things to be the very best they can be with a program. And so as a head football coach, that's really difficult. And I don't think anybody can fault that. So you got to maneuver it. So look, it's here. You've got to be able to, I think 2 things. You got to be able to build a great culture in your program so that you can help those guys see the vision, see the long-term benefits of staying in your program and want to be here. And you're trying to minimize the amount of guys that are maybe utilizing the transfer portal for whatever reason, right? And then I think the other thing is, hey, you're going to have to utilize the transfer portal yourself, and you're going to have to keep up with the world of college football because there's probably some holes and some gaps that you have to fill because there are going to be guys that do leave, and you're not going to be able to just automatically get a guy that's developed right away unless you do try to get a kid that maybe has played some college football somewhere else, maybe has come from a little bit higher level program, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a double-edged sword. I think you gotta protect your team the best you can to build the best culture and the best program you can. And you've also got to leverage the transfer portal for the best way to help build that team. And I don't believe in adding anybody to the program, whether he's in high school or coming from a JC or a 4-year transfer or whatever. He's got to be the right fit no matter what. And so we're going to always make sure that we're looking for those guys, whether it's a transfer portal guy or not. And so, it's there. it's a tough situation, right? And so it's not a popular one in terms. I mean, everybody's going to have an opinion, and for me as the head coach, we're just trying to sustain a great program, trying to build a great program, and we want to add the right guys to it. And we don't want a bunch of guys jumping ship, each and every semester or each and every year. We want to be able to keep guys developing in the program so that we can see the fruits and the benefits by the time they get to sophomores, juniors, and seniors.
Yeah. I like the way that you put that, the double-edged sword. I mean, because that's exactly what a lot of these newer things
Mhm.
with NIL and transfer portals and all of that, they all have benefits, but like you said, they also have there can be some, bad effects too, and you got to just kind of navigate the waters,
Yeah.
as you said. So in preparation, for your first season, looking ahead, you guys actually have a pretty tough week 1 game against UMD. So, is that something that you guys are focusing on? I mean, sometimes teams will have kind of a rust buster game. They can kind of figure out the kinks. Maybe they play an easier opponent. Other teams get those first week really tough opponents. Does that make your preparation different or more challenging?
I don't know that it does. I think the way that we approach it, it's how we play, not who we play. So, regardless of how good week 1 opponent is, or versus 2, 3, 4, fifth week opponents are, we got to make sure that we're at our best. And I certainly think it grabs the attention of our players and of probably people that are out there outside the program, which is great. We want to play great competition. We want to play high level programs. They've done a very good job at Duluth, and it's certainly a challenge that we're gonna respect and be able to move into, to say, you know what, we're gonna have to play our best here, and it's gonna be a great test for us. And so I think with that, you're trying to get your schedule on a couple different levels where, hey, can you get some regional location games and, make that, beneficial for how that looks? Can you get quality competition? Can you get, opponents that you're going to be able to match up against? And so it's a combination of all those things. I do think that there's something out there in Division II where, the margin of talent and ability and success, I think it's like all very relative to a degree, in terms of, if you play your best every single week more consistently than the people on your schedule, you have a great opportunity to win games. I don't know that you need just, all the 4 and 5-star recruits that are out there to be good. And that's, of course, we're not getting those guys anyway. I mean, it's Division II, and that's my point. Like, you've got a chance to be able to beat people in ways where you're going to outwork them, you're going to out culture them, you're going to out mentality them, you're going to out execute them. You've got to be better at your stuff than what they are at their stuff. And that's not to say there's not great players at Division II. I'm not trying to insinuate that at all. There are. What I'm saying is, every week, I think you have a great opportunity to be successful. And what we have to do at Northern Michigan here is, we've got to focus on ourselves. We want to make sure that we're at the very best, highest level that we can be at, and that will afford us an opportunity to be successful.
All right. And kind of going off of that as we wrap up here, like, what do you see as a possible future for NMU football? Like, where can this program go?
Oh, I think the sky's the limit. My goodness. I think with the resources that we have here, our location, we're funded very well. Our alumni base is absolutely fantastic. We have tradition here. We've got to be able to build on that and update that. And yet, I think it's a sleeping giant. I really think there's a lot out there that we can accomplish and we can turn the corner to do. And so we've got to get the right fits all the time. We're a little off the beaten path. Obviously Marquette, Michigan is a little bit of ways away from just all your, normally functioning interstates and highways. But hey, if we get guys that understand that and can fit in here and embrace it, we can have a ton of success here. And I think, the expectation in my mind is to get us back to being a very competitive team in the GLIAC to be able to put ourselves in that position to compete for GLIAC championships and to be extremely competitive nationally, to be able to put ourselves in a position to compete for national championships. And, if we can do that on the national scene and on the GLIAC scene, we're going to be doing really, really good things. And so this program has a ton of potential, and it's not going to happen overnight, but surely, I think we're on the way to success in a very quick manner here.
All right. Well, I think that's a good way to wrap it up and good note to end on. So thank you very much for joining me, Coach. Thanks for
Yeah,
taking out some time.
absolutely. Thanks so much, Alex. Great to be with you today.
Yeah.